Today the world has lost a great wildlife icon, a passionate conservationist, and one of the proudest dads on the planet. He died what he loved doing best. And he left this world in a happy and peaceful state of mind. He would have said, "Croc's for all."
Sometimes it seems that a strong and amazing person can inspire everyone around them that comes in contact with them, but also have a sad story attached to it that has moments of happiness in it. It can move the strongest people to find encouragement in their own life. Not much in this world can be more rewarding than being a good friend, a good husband, a good father, when someone can carry all of it at once and make it look easy. Steve Irwin seemed to be that man. There's a moment in all of our lives where we felt Steve touch our heart, laughing with friends, playing with his children, just enjoying the simple things of life, acting like a child in all the right ways. It's encouraging to see someone love life. Steve meant something to us as kids watching him on television, or maybe you were a parent watching your child enjoy The Crocodile Hunter. But what was is now memory that's become moments of pain. To think that Steve is gone with the ages. He's left a rich history that is bigger and more than Steve could have ever imagined, even if he made it to be an old man. He'll always remain 44, the young, fearless guy we all talked about daily with our friends. This is the day Steve Irwin died.
Fast car, a flash house, and a gold-plated dunny to me. Absolutely no good at all. I've been put on this planet to protect wildlife and wilderness areas. And you know, money's great. I can't get enough money. And you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to buy wilderness areas with it. Every single cent I get goes straight into conservation. And guess what, Charles? I don't give a rip whose money it is, mate. I'll use it and I'll spend it on buying land.
The life of Steve seemed to be the life of the luckiest man in the world. Who else could say they were a wildlife park owner, with a successful television show riding right beside him as well? And not in just Australia where Steve's park was, but essentially Steve had made a big impact in the North American market as well. It seemed to be that everyone was fighting over Steve when it came to late night television, wanting Steve to come on and talk, and show off his animals. You not only got the wild and cute and dangerous animals, but you got Steve, who was a lovable creature himself. There's no doubt that Steve had many talents hanging from his belt loop. He was known as the Crocodile Hunter, the wild guy that would put his face right in the face of a giant crocodile that seemed to be just a dinosaur to the rest of us. But show and teach people that there were more to animals than we knew about, capturing our curiosity. Steve was more than charismatic, with a huge personality that was no doubt the biggest talent he was holding. Steve became so big at one point in the zeitgeist of entertainment that it seemed that you couldn't go a day without someone doing an impression of Steve Irwin. From parents to kids, just to people at work every day inside the break room, people were talking about Steve Irwin at least one time a day. Steve was the real deal. He was obsessed with one thing, building his wildlife refuge as big and beautiful as he could. Steve made no secret about it. If you wanted to give him money for a project, he was going to take the money and use it to help animals. Steve took over ownership of the park in 1991 from his parents and quickly turned it around into something amazing that they never thought of before. Steve wanted no part of just sitting behind a desk and counting money. He focused on being hands-on in the park every day, making sure his eyes were on everything and constantly learning about his animals. Many people may not be aware, but Terry Irwin is not Australian. She met Steve very early on in his career. Terry herself was a businesswoman that's from Oregon, but also was a conservationist, having a love of nature and animals herself. And who better for Terry to meet one day when she was in Australia, just so happening to be visiting a wildlife park, and she happened to see a young Steve Irwin feeding crocodiles. Long story short, they married in 1992, and Terry went right into the family business. No one could have ever seen what was coming for the Irwin family. The TV show The Crocodile Hunter actually made the Animal Planet Network channel what it is today, giving it life and a huge boost when it needed it. The show The Crocodile Hunter was really just a chance for Steve to have a show that showed his crazy life, but for the network, it was a chance as well. It was a win for both of them. One element that we were lucky enough to see was from Steve being a father, along with being a man with not much spare time himself, but he was there to raise his children, showing them kindness and teaching them about the animals around them that they live with and what to be true. Steve's life seemed to be something only one could dream of, or just even be a part of it. We saw Steve escape so many dangers, tangled up with animals. No one ever thought he would meet the last page sooner than we all wanted. Steve found himself in a great moment in his life, busy raising 2 young children, married to a smart and beautiful woman that he always talked about and was by his side. In 2006, Steve was 44, finding himself in the last month of his life that September. Steve had started a new project that would have him filming in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. No one could have ever imagined what would unfold for Steve in what was supposed to be a simple, easy job for this particular project. On September 4th of that year, Steve would have his last breakfast, his last kiss, and his last breath. He would find himself with a slow death in a beautiful place. On that day, Steve was with his film crew, filming a new series called Ocean's Deadliest. The day was nice and the week had gone great, getting what the crew needed, film-wise, for Steve. On this day, Steve was meant to film with a tiger shark, but after looking for a tiger shark for much of the day, one never showed itself. But something else did appear out of the shallow waters around Steve, and with that, the crew decided to switch topics for a side project that Steve had been working on as well. The creature that swam up to find Steve was an 8-foot stingray. Everyone was excited, including Steve. Steve wasn't new to stingrays. He had shot with them before, working with them. He knew the animal. The plan was for Steve to swim up to the stingray and for the animal to swim off, being scared of Steve coming up to it. But that was the plan that never worked. All the eyes and all the cameras were on Steve at this very moment. Steve made his way into the water, waved at the cameramen, and started swimming towards the stingray. Steve swims up right behind it, when suddenly the stingray starts to shoot its tail with a sharp barb at the end of it, right towards Steve. Steve has no time to react and can't get out of the way. The barb hits him multiple times, but the death pierce that made its blow was the moment the barb went straight into Steve's heart. Not even Steve knew it. At that moment, Steve was fatally wounded. He's in a pool of his own blood that's running out of his chest at an unbelievable amount. Everyone jumps into the water for Steve. The crew pulls him on the boat, lays him down, holding him, putting their hands over the wound, pushing as hard as they can to stop the blood from coming out. When Steve is on the boat, he's still conscious at this moment, but losing blood at an unbelievable pace. As his heart continues to pump looking for blood, what it can capture, it just spills out of Steve's chest. Steve says to his friend he thinks his lung's been pierced, but it was actually Steve's heart. Steve's friends hold him as best as they can. The boat speeds towards help, crashing through the waves. Steve's last words to his best friend were, "I'm dying." It was the last thing Steve ever said. They held him tight, wept over him, knowing they could do nothing. Steve died right there in the boat that brought him out, around his friends. When the boat made it to shore, the person in charge, Steve's good friend, told everyone to empty their camera and put the film on the deck, and that he was going to destroy it right there. They had captured Steve's death on film, every bit of it, the sound, the sight, everything. But they knew if it left the boat, they would never get it back. By the time they arrived to any real help, Steve is lifeless. His heart has a hole in it, and he's missing most of his blood. There's not a person connected to Steve that wasn't affected for the rest of their life about his own death. After Steve's death, days later, a service is held for him at the park. They put Steve's favorite truck right in the middle, where everyone can see it, right on the open platform where Steve, for years, stood feeding crocodiles. Terry is now a widow, but she's a strong woman that pushes through it, raising her children and tossing what life has for her off to the side and looking for greener grass. But still the pain is there, she says. It never truly leaves. But a story that found a devastating moment turns into a beautiful surprise. Steve and Terry's children grow up and play a huge part in what would come for the next generation of the park. They push their father's legacy, and they both make Steve a grandfather. Robert became the next crocodile hunter for a new generation that simply just ate him up, and people can't get enough of him. In the end, you see what Steve left: an amazing family, a legacy, friends that still to this day miss him and talk about him every day. Long live the man that was and still is the legend, Steve Irwin.